Hi everybody, I'm going to try and make a quick video about how to do a urinalysis, all right? I've tried a couple of times on my computer and I have a Mac and I cannot figure out for some reason, but the audio is really bad, so I've given up and I'm just doing this on my phone. So forgive me if the phone falls or, I don't know, all those other things that can happen. The dogs bark, somebody comes to the door, whatever. I will do my best, okay? So urinalysis. Sometimes we receive urine in a little biohazard bag, in a cup. I should have done that. I should have left it in the bag, just like this, little orange cup in a biohazard bag. But sometimes, if you're working in a nursing home or something, sometimes you'll have to tell the patient to go in and do the urinalysis or collect their urine right there in the office. So the first thing you have to do, and if you've already done the whole patient project, I just kind of wanted to get you guys thinking about all the different things that can happen with a patient. I just used two, but not everybody can pee in a cup. Just can't be done. They're older, they might need assistance getting up, they can't really sit and hold the cup or stand and pee and to collect the urine. So we have these. These are called hats. They're not really hats. They go in the toilet. Don't wear them on your head. But if you can see in there, they have little cc's or ounces, because in hospitals or in other areas of medicine, you might be needed to measure a person's in and out of urine, or in of fluids and out of urine, to see if there's restrictions. So there's numbers in here, but for us it's really just to help a patient who maybe is having difficulty getting the urine actually in the cup, and we can collect it from here. So that's the first thing. That's even before it gets collected. Make it easy. Offer it to the patient. Hey, especially if maybe they have a walker, or if you see that they're a little unsteady on their feet, or they're elderly or something. Do you want a hat? I can put it in the toilet for you, no problem, and we can collect it right from there. But that's over now, and we have a urine sample. These are urine cups. They're pretty common. There's other types, but they're all pretty much the same. They have a little tab on them that if that's broken, you know that it's not sterile anymore. So that's what a urine cup looks like. And what's the first thing they ask for on the urine? Name and date of birth, always. Name and date of birth. It's your new mantra. So we have urine from myself, name and date of birth. I used some random birthday just in case. And we're going to do a simple dip strip test for urine. And then at the end of it, we're also going to prepare it to be sent off to the lab in the we'll just pretend that the doctor didn't like what they saw in the results of the dip strip, and that you're going to send it off, okay? So that's what we're going to do next. So these are dip strip tests. They're pretty common. Mine are expired by like 2 years, so we're not taking any of these results seriously. But this is what they look like, just like it shows on the bottle. These are, oh, actually you go like this. These are the strip tests, okay? So we take one of those, cap back on. What's the first thing we need to do? Gloves. I know that this is my urine, but you don't know whose urine you got. You're always using gloves, always. Got my gloves on. I'm going to do my dip strip test. So they're flexible, so that might not look like a lot of urine, but it's plenty. You don't really need a lot to do a test. So I carefully take the lid off. They can be very sticky, and be very careful. Don't apply too much pressure, but too little and you won't be able to open it. And then if I can show you, right, this doesn't fit all the way in, but because they're flexible, you can kind of just squish them down in there and make sure that every one of those little colored pads on the strip gets soaked in urine. You can also use a pipette. like this to do the same thing. We're going to use it for something else, but you could use it for that. And then I tap it on my paper towel and I let it sit for just a minute. And some of the things, I do have a couple of videos that were professionally made on your site for next week or for class, but they're a little bit more complicated and a little bit more than I wanted to go into. They're very interesting. I recommend watching them. You might enjoy that kind of stuff. I'm trying to make lab techs out of all of you, you know that. But encourage you to go on. But as a phlebotomist, you know, we usually only look for leukocytes, glucose, protein in the urine. Those are the more common ones. For a dip strip, there's a lot of reasons why those other things are not looked into, and it goes into that on the video. But usually it's just some common specific gravity leukocytes, proteins, things like that in the urine. So what we do now that we've talked for a minute, is we literally just take this jar and we hold the results, or I'm trying to do this correctly, up against here and see how they've changed. And you can see that some of my colors have changed. And you would just follow along and match it and then write down what it says. I know it's hard to see. I don't know if it'll, but you write down what it says underneath the color that you've matched for each square. The first one looks normal, just negative, right? The second one has a little bit of a color change, but not really. The third one has changed quite dramatically. So on this, it's glucose, bilirubin, and ketones. So my ketones are up high. My glucose and bilirubin are negative, and that's how you go along with these. The next one is specific gravity. My specific gravity isn't quite negative either. Oh no, yes it is. Oh no, it isn't. My specific gravity is a little bit high, which could just mean a few things. I could be dehydrated, right? Next one is pH. pH is normal. So you just sort of go along, and then you would write those things down on a sheet of paper that's usually provided to you by your facility that you work in. And you would note down the things that were off. You wouldn't normally write down negative, negative, negative. You would write, you know, trace blood, that sort of thing. The other thing that's on the sheets normally is appearance. So what you do with that is you want to look at the blood. Let me make sure my cap is on strong here. You want to, I'm sorry, the urine. You want to look at the sample and give it just a look. Is it dark yellow? Is it light yellow? Does it have, is it cloudy or turbid? Is it very turbid, which might even be opaque? Sometimes they're very clear or light colored yellow, like a Chardonnay color, even as clear as urine. I mean, water. If somebody drinks a lot of water, their urine can be very clear. You wouldn't even be able to see anything in it. That's another thing that you would write down. Now, say you wrote down these results on a piece of paper that was, you know, given to you. Usually it has a place for the name and date of birth or the label. And then you gave it to the doctor, and the doctor said, he or she said, we are going to send this further onto the lab because I want it to be tested microscopically, meaning that they would manually take a look at it under a microscope. And I want it to go for a culture if the micro shows any you know, increased whites or anything. I want it to go further and go for a culture, which would go to microbiology, right? So then we use these two tubes. This one is a urinalysis tube. If I hold it up close, I don't know if it will focus, but it actually says UA. It doesn't really focus. It actually says UA preservative on there. So UA is urinalysis. And this one says urine, C and S, which stands for culture and sensitivity. So these two tubes go to usually go to the lab. One goes to, well, they both go to urine, and if the tests that are run on the UA come out positive or high in some way, then they think they might want to culture it to see if there's an infection. There might be bacteria growing in the urine. Then they'll send this tube off to microbiology, and it will be planted and see what grows. So how do we get the urine in the tubes? They're very much like vacutainer tubes. They are vacutainer tubes. They're very much like a blood collection tube. They have that rubber stopper on the inside. This one, the rubber stopper is just right on the top. And so how do we do that? So we have this little device we call a straw, a urine straw. And that's exactly what it is. It's a straw that goes into the urine, but what's in here is a sharp that will pierce the end of the tube. So we put it in just like we're collecting blood. Don't pop it on before it's in the urine, otherwise it will just suck up the air and then you've wrecked your tube, right? So so you want to pop it in just like you would as if you were collecting blood, and it will fill up. And now you have a tube of urine that you're going to send in. Same thing with the culture tube. You're going to pop the culture tube into the barrel just like you're drawing blood, and you're going to press it on. It will suck up the blood through the straw, the urine through the straw, and now you have a tube full of urine that can go to microbiology if needed. So these two tubes get sent to the lab, and then they get processed. Now, there's a third test that I want you to look at. A little aside, this has a sharp in it, so where do we dispose of this? In a sharps box. Exactly. Now, there's one more tube that I want to show you how to fill. We don't use the straw with it, and it's called an Aptima tube. This is for chlamydia. A lot of times, girls who are about to start using birth control or have complaints, they'll do a chlamydia test on them, but it's pretty common, especially, I worked in a pediatric office for a long time, and every single girl that came in that, was going to start using birth control, 16, 17, 18 years old, would get a chlamydia test just to rule it out before they started with birth control. So on this, it says Aptima. It is a urine sample. You got to be careful when you open it because I can't really show it to you, but there's a fluid in there. And you don't want to spill that when you open it, so be careful opening it. But the important part is these two black lines, one on the bottom and one on the top. You want to put urine into this tube right in the middle of that window, okay? That fill window. There's no rubber. You don't use this on the straw. You can't, put it into a barrel and use a sharp. I know from experience because when I first became a phlebotomist, I tried to do that. I couldn't quite understand what was wrong. This is for processing. So you have to actually take the cap off of this. It's a little bit different. And use a pipette. And suck up the blood. Hold on, let me just put this down for a second. I keep saying the blood, and suck up the sample and put it in here, right in between the window. I don't know if you can see that real well, but it's right in between the window of the black lines and in the fill window. I think you can see it better there. So that's that. And now these three can go together to the lab. So we would put them in a bag. Or, if you work in a big facility, there's usually just big bins that you might throw them into, and then the lab techs come and take them. And then that's it. But not always all three go. Very commonly the UA and the culture go. And less common, but very frequently an Aptima tube will go as well. And that's it. And you send it off to the lab, and it gets transferred. Now, where does this go? Where are we going to dispose of this? Raise your hand if you know. Just kidding, I can't see you. It's biohazard waste. It doesn't have to go in a sharps box because it's not a sharp, but it is biohazard, so this will go in a biohazard box. Luckily, I live near one. And then, of course, you want to recap your urine cup. And different places have different routines about this. You might need to save this for a few days just in case there's a lab accident or something gets lost or they want another sample for some reason. You might need to keep this urine and they'll have a spot for that. Or sometimes they just dump them and you throw them out. It depends on the facility that you work at. So I hope you learned a little bit about urinalysis today. Like I said, the videos that I've posted, the part 1, I definitely want you to watch. It's very interesting, and I want you to see that. Part 2 and part 3 have so much information, more than I even know or could even tell you. I learned a lot watching them, but they are very interesting. But that's the basic setup and routine for processing a urinalysis, doing a dip test, and sending it off to the lab. And I hope you learned something from that. Okay, thanks.